Hey, what's up, guys? I thought it would be, a good idea just to do a refresher, and just to talk about Massive for a little while, and it's a way to, add one more video. So all in all, Massive is pretty good. When you were learning it, I hope you enjoyed the videos, but when you are figuring everything out, I hope you use a signal analyzer and a frequency analyzer to see what's going on. Generally speaking, Massive is quite nice. Obviously, you have your voices up here. So for modern like VSTs, a voice is simply put, a note. So if you're playing a chord, which is which would be 3 keys, and you have a long release. If you don't have a long release, you'll see your voices up here. You'll see 3. Right? If you bump up the release, more release, and you do the same thing, you go up to 9 voices because the release is taking up voices, right? It's not like, older synths or even the virus or whatever, or a voice is like a unit of processing. It's not really like one voice would take up, a reverb or a delay unit, or a voice would be, it would take up unison. The Nord in particular, unison does not take up any extra voices, which is pretty badass at the time. But yeah, that's, a refresher on voices, really. I don't think I explained that. Generally speaking, Massive is broken up into parts that will be easily understood when you break them up into parts, right? So you'll notice that this little black border around everything, you have your oscillator, your filter, your amplifier, your effects, your inserts, your macro control, and your main tabs here, and then your modulation tabs here, right? It's all laid out all in one page. Your modulation oscillator, which is kind of an LFO, but it's tuned to which key you're playing, so it has continuity, and it works out via pitch, so you get pitched modulation in the frequency range, white noise feedback. So your routing, this is kind of intimidating for the new guy, but all you have to know is by default, oscillator, 2 filter, 2 amplifier, 2 effects, 2 master, right? And then you can modulate anything that has a little black box. So it's basically, a lot of things. You can even modulation options. So you can have an LFO modulating an attack or modulating the release over a long period of time, so you get more of an evolving kind of texture. The modulation oscillator modulates either in different ways: ring mod, phase mod, which is FM, positional modulation, which modulates the wavetable position, and the filter, right? But it's key dependent, and I can't explain it. But if you have your pitch at an inharmonic and you modulate it, it sounds like blah. It sounds like an LFO. But if it's in continuity, which is 0, 12, 24, minus or negative, maybe this make a lot more sense. That's inharmonic. It doesn't sound too good. But when it is harmonic, the ratio of your modulation or your LFO is in continuity with your key, right? So this modulation oscillator is pretty powerful, and it's a basis of FM synthesis, which I completely suck at explaining. So yeah, back to our oscillators. We have how it's set up, and this is kind of difficult to figure out. It's your wavetable position, and this is for a lot of them, like the traditional ones, square saw. It's like, okay, square saw. So you have a all the way counterclockwise, or all the way to the left, I should say, is you have a square, and all the way to the right you have a saw, right? So you morph between them. You can see that here, and that's a pretty good way to go about it. For the wavetable oscillators, there's multiple wavetables and you morph between them. It's a little bit more complex. Right, and you know, it's how you get like unique timbres, and you can even modulate the wavetable position, or you know, with our dependent modulation oscillator, having it in continuity with the modulation of the key. That makes any sense. And yeah, there's a lot of different wavetables. This, you know, wavetables basically. Here's a good example. Right, we have an acid wavetable. And like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it's the same as having this, and I'll just move this to filter 2. Come on. And it's the same as having a low pass with a lot of resonance. More or less, you can see it here. You can see it here, and you know, it's basically, it's an easier way to get unique sounds instead of, you know, having something you have to run through a filter. It's like, oh, we already have the wave shape for you. Use it. And it was, you know, coined, or it was invented by Waldorf, like the PPG, or not RPG, PPG or something or other. And, you know, that's where wavetable synthesis came about. So it's basically a cycle that is not, you know, it's not like a traditional waveform that, you know, capacitor opens and closes it, or it's not a sine. It's very complicated in terms of its type thing. And that's how you get, you know, unique timbres without, you know, the processing horsepower. A Moog, it'd be very difficult to have a sound like this. And that, you know, this gentle speech or modern talking is made by a bunch of filters moving, and it's kind of like, think of it like, well, modern talking in particular, you know, phone. Think of it like, okay, well, you know, a child, we know how filters work. Well, we have a filter, and our filter is in our face. Our mouths filter sounds. We change the shape of our mouth, and we attenuate, you know, the sound coming from our vocal cords, and that basically makes the sound. That's how, you know, we can imitate, you know, yo 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 yo, you know, we can imitate those sounds. You know, it's the sound of multiple filters changing, because the inside of our mouths change when it's open, when it's closed, or whatever, you know, with our tongue and all that gross stuff. And the pitch of our voice is changed with that. So, you know, yeah, off on a tangent. That's a wavetable, and that's basically filtering. Each oscillator has 3 filter modes. So spectrum would be, it's dependent, but it's mostly a low pass filter. It will shave off the high, like harsh end, and that's, you know, pretty effective. It's a filter stage before the filter stage. So each oscillator has its own low pass filter traditionally, and that way you can get, you know, it's a lot more flexible. There's that, and then there's bend. So I will go square. So this is a square, and I will go bend plus or minus. So plus or minus is basically, it bends it. Or actually, I'll do a sine. And I'll do bend positive. I believe positive, it bends the positive portion. So it's positive and negative. It bends it, and you can get a unique timbre, right? So that's a very interesting sound. We can bend it the other way. Bend the lower amount. I bet someone could explain it way better than me, and that is bend. Format, this is a little bit confusing. I've come across format oscillators on the virus, and what this does is it pitches the harmonics over using complex math, as far as I know. So this is none. Right, you'll see it pitch it over. So you'll see for spectrum, right? We have a lot of harmonics there. You know, we have our upper harmonics, and what the format does is it kind of pitches it over, and you get dubstep sounds, which are neat, I guess. So yeah, you have three oscillators. So it's really easy to get like super awesome sounds. We'll go back to spectrum. So wavetable position would be the resonance. It depends on the wavetable, but acid, this is like, you know, that. So you can have that, and then you can add, say, a square, and we'll pitch that down. Oh, we might want to turn it on. We'll run it through the filter. Yeah, each oscillator can be routed to either filter 1 or filter 2 or both. Right, which brings me to our oscillator tab, and we can restart each oscillator. So what if I want them to not be stacked? I want to offset oscillator 1. 180 degrees, so it kind of, they both start, well, the oscillator 1 will start after oscillator 2. If I stack them up, they both start at the same time. And if I move it over all the way 100 degree or 360, so it goes back to where it was. Right, so right in the middle, we have we have two saw waves basically starting at the same time. A better example would be if I reset the pitch. Right, so now we have like a squarey sine, but the resonant part happens in between, so the phase is offset, so we get a richer sound. If we have them stacked, kind of does that. So it's kind of like pulse width modulation, or no, it's adjusting the pulse width, but with, you know, we're syncing each oscillator, you know, side by side, which is neat. Yeah, again, we can route these, so we can have, you know, oscillator 1 go into filter 1, oscillator 2 go into filter 2, and we can do some cool stuff, further shaping and refining. It could be anything, modulation. Yeah, we can do stuff like this. You can pitch it down to add more grit. You know, it does, you know, cool stuff even to sine waves. Right, so like sine wave by itself, kind of boring. No harmonics, it's just a sub. But with our modulation. And we can even modulate the modulation. So we'll drag an envelope there. Oh, the other way. So we get an FM sound. We can have that. We can add another one. So we're mixing FM with traditional subtractive synthesis. Which brings me to noise. Now, noise is pretty cool. I like the noise on the. It's a lot. It's not just simple, you know, white noise and color. So yeah, well, that's pretty digital sounding. But the color is kind of like a low pass. You can make it less or more intense. One of my favorite is the metallic. It sounds like a cymbal. And we can treat it as such, so we can have that map to the amplifier, this envelope map to the amplifier, and we can synthesize drums, or no, percussion-y instruments. It's not necessarily pitch tracked, but we can, and we're going to do that with, velocity keyboard tracking, like this maybe. Right, so we have our key tracking here, which is this. It's very linear. So as we move up the keys, the color opens. So in fact, we can kind of key track our noise. Maybe not that intense. Right, and that's pretty cool because then we can do weird stuff. So for, say if we have like a lead and we have our white noise and we want our white noise to be a little bit more intense on the higher frequencies, but not so much on the lower, we would have it kind of like this. Oops. As we go down. You get the idea. And key tracking can be applied to a lot of cool things, and I'll show you. So key tracking could be applied to it can be applied to the wavetable position. So the wavetable moves as we go up the keyboard. And we can have that, and then we can do that. Pretty cool. Generally the filters are pretty cool, and the filters can act in parallel or series, and I suggest you watch that video because I explain it. Parallel and series. Series would be one after another, so usually, filter 1 will go into filter 2. So you can have filter 1 doing something and then filter 2 attenuating it a bit more. So you can have a very hard kind of filter with resonance, and then you can attenuate the filter, that previous filter, with a low pass filter to clean it up. So we have that. They are in series now, and I want them both to be on, and I want only the output of filter 2 to go out, or else it completely, makes series pointless. So we'll go scream. Right, so I have a very kind of intense filter, and what I want to do is have a low pass here, and that is just another filter, and it cleans it up a little bit. So, which brings me to feedback. Feedback's pretty cool. I'm gonna turn that on. I'm gonna have the feedback of filter 1. So we have our sounds going into filter 1, into our feedback. We'll just imagine it's up here, and that's being rerouted into filter 1 and then into filter 2. So we're getting feedback. A very fat sound. So yeah, with that, we've taken a lot of harmonics out just because the feedback is so feedbacky. I'm going to modulate the cutoff. I'm actually going to change this to one voice, so I can only play one voice at a time. Right, so that's opening and closing very fast, and we got feedback going on. Right, pretty cool. What we're going to do now is add a bit of tubulations. So I'm going to have this extreme. So we have a bit of we have a changing into more of a square wave. So it's being intense for just a split second. So So I'll mix the two in with wet dry. Right. And then we can do some neat stuff with voicing. Maximum 2 voices. Actually, we'll do pan position. Kind of a wide sound. Sounds interesting. So now, let's find Chrome. Let's find a good one. Oh wait, maybe. Maybe we'll go back to Chrome and we will format that stuff out. Alright, so I want to modulate that, why not? Right, so how the LFOs work is you have 2 LFOs and you can morph between them. So we have a sine and then we have a triangle here. We can morph between them so it's like a sine triangle. Or you just have sine, or triangle, or square. So what I want to do is I want to have our internal envelope, and I don't want the rate. Yeah, I don't want the amplifier to be prominent. Oh, other way, probably. Oh, actually, it was the right way. See, it gets kind of confusing, but whatever. So the LFO rate doesn't start right away. It starts at 0 and then slowly climbs up the amplifier, and this is basically the amount of the modulation we're doing. And we can do a bunch of cool stuff with that. Like make it faster. We can also modulate the wavetable position. And we can even modulate oscillator 1. So if you have like this, that doesn't sound too neat. A bit of phase modulation can add a bit of meat to it. Right, and with the feedback. Right, no filter or anything. And then we can add, you know, classic tube, but slightly. So look at what it does to the wave shape. Just kind of fold it back. It takes all those peaks and just kind of levels them out, which is what clipping does. Then we can have a bit of, you know, low pass. And have this attached to an envelope. completely change it by adding, you know, a liberal amount of reverb. Right now, it kind of sounds like, you know, a brass instrument, which is cool. Yeah, routing, voicing. Yeah, I explained that one. Yeah, generally it's pretty nice. Again, you can modulate basically anything, including the pan. Generally adding chaos. So let's see where the insert is. Insert 1, where are you? Say if I want the insert 1 to be in the feedback chain. So feedback into, yeah, so insert 1. So let's see what I can do here with that. I can clip it before the feedback, so that kind of prevents it from going crazy. Maybe it destroys it. I'll try that again. So let's see what that does. I want to turn it on. So maybe, you know, a bit of clipping and feedback in series. Could, you know, make a neat little effect. We can also shape it. So let's see what this does to an actual sine wave. Oh golly, it shapes it. And does some cool stuff. And yeah, you can put a low pass or a high pass filter before the feedback to add a bit of cool crunch. There's bit crush, and then there's a frequency shifter. Which adds like it could add, you know, an upper harmonic if you wet dry it. Which is pretty neat. Sample and hold, that is a resolution, D resolution. Down sample. So what would that sound like, say, on a saw? Right. Could add a bit of neatness. So delay synced. The EQ is a last step kind of shaper. All right, well, that's been about a half an hour. And, you know, it's quite robust, and it's just a combination of all sorts of things that go into making a sound. And it's relatively simple once you understand the fundamentals of it. So what we did is we broke it down. It's like a mathematical formula. I broke it down to smaller parts that could be easily understood, and then hopefully now you know how it all kind of comes together. All right. Thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe, share, and disco dance. All right. Take care.